of criminal law, it is a crime in itself to not report any unlawful acts. This is also known as a failure to report. Here lies my idea of this law and what I consider to be high-stake examples along with it. You may find them compelling in a sense. I'm not saying there aren't certain cases in which someone sees something and cannot report the crime for their own security. I'm entirely aware of that, especially if the specific organization or group has the most tainted power you could imagine. And I'm not talking about your neighbor who likes to smoke hash. I'm speaking of a higher, more efficient level of organized crime that is predominant amongst only the wealthiest of individuals and organizations. It's rather hard to see these crimes for what they really are and how deep the rabbit hole really goes, because we are in a valley, and they're on the mountaintops of this valley. But no matter how much wealth or status you may have accumulated, these crimes of a specific caliber will always fall through the cracks. If you have yet to get an idea of what I'm talking about, here are several. Balenciaga, Diddy, Epstein, Oprah Winfrey, South Africa Academy for Girls, Child Protective Services, Kevin Spacey, Prince Andrew, and so on. In my opinion, they might as well all be roommates. And I guess Epstein and Andrew were at some point, right? These crimes are all so well known, and the allegations between them are all so coherent. But there is far too much corroboration here for me to believe that this is just happenstance. And one thing taught to investigators is that there is no such thing as coincidences. I'm not an investigator, but I'm also not credulous. Something that I would consider to be a denominating factor is how memory really helps with being able to simply recall what one has done in the past. You can determine a lot from their character and organization as an entity. And that's one thing I can't really comprehend about the mass. Do you just not remember what these people did? What they have done behind closed doors? I suppose this is all deciding on how apprehensive you really are about the free real estate in your own mind. Or perhaps your moral insight on what really matters to you. But to each his own. I also don't fancy being lied to and sold out on the fact that people at the top are good people who we can trust with making laws and using their products. But as for the main theme of this video essay, it's more so about the ones I consider to be accomplices to these crimes in question. Did you know when you work with Kevin Spacey, you have to sign a sexual misconduct contract to acknowledge his sexual misconduct? So when you get on the job site, you know what to expect, and you can't cry wolf about it later in a court of law. Kevin Spacey was acquitted on all sexual misconduct charges because he was able to cough up $31 million. The guy cornered a little boy way back, and they kept hiring him after those allegations. Not to mention the work colleagues that vouched for Roman Polanski while he was being a full-fledged pedophile. And he's been admitted to it for years now. No charges for Roman. He moved out of the country real quick, and he wasn't able to ever get a court hearing, and the cops were never able to apprehend him. The guy can still work on set with kids. Can you believe that? It's gut-wrenching, I know. Something to also put some thought into would be these awful, unprecedented shows like The Downfall of Diddy or Epstein's Filthy Rich. Think about it. The people who directed these shows are simply pinning it on one or two individuals where the evidence points to them to a considerable degree. Well, if you look at the fucking titles, it has Epstein directly in it and Diddy, Downfall of Diddy and Epstein's Filthy Rich. But it never mentions that who else was a part of the crime was their accomplices and their payees and the supporters who are of status. I mean, fucking Epstein even gave us a book to solve like 70% of the issue with everyone's name in it. But now it's just a matter of conviction, in my opinion. Now, this is what I would consider to be a half-truth. They're not revealing to us as much as they really know, simply because they've revealed as much as they need to, without harboring suspicion to the others hidden in plain sight or anonymous. They also use tactics like soft disclosure to settle our nerves so we aren't shocked about the secret lives when we evidently find out. Because, like I've mentioned before, these incidents tend to slip through the cracks, and recently, shit, they've been falling through to a considerable degree. And sometimes I feel like I'm the only one that notices. But setting aside a small percentile of the issue, I'll discuss another percentile that is of issue. Every single person who has worked on these sets and have seen how the celebrity industry works as a whole, even if not guilty of a direct crime, they witnessed these crimes and or evidence of the crime and are knowledgeable of these crimes. They turn the other way and keep quiet, all for their security and a little bit of money. Kudos to them for having the gall to do so. I could never turn an eye to such misconduct of children. Nobody should, and not due to consequences or pay cuts or losing movie roles or brand deals, but simply because it's the right thing to do. Now, we can certainly get into a much more intense gaze into this criminal underworld and discuss the intricate and unparalleled details of it, but perhaps that's a conversation for later. And I guess a question to ask right about now would be, what's your angle, your end goal? What is it to you? All this studying and research and investigating for what? Now, everyone has to figure that out for themselves. I figured what would make the most sense is closure. Just finding out the truth, because it's not really an argument anymore. If this is something happening on a mass scale, it's now a matter of who's specifically involved and who's letting it slide. Matter of fact, we know who's letting it slide. All of them. But then again, it's what you can prove in a court of law. And if you're striving for the latter, perhaps to be more conscientious, then that'd be your angle. But if you're anything like me, then you like picking fights you know can't be won.